Hello, I'm Julie from the Spellbound Bead Company, and this year we're celebrating our 40th anniversary. So that's 40 ruby years of playing with beads. We're doing lots of things to celebrate this anniversary, but for the moment I'm going to do a series of videos to show you how to make a necklace that's packed with beady memories. This has got all sorts of different things in from over our 40 years of being involved in beads. There are beads from all the different countries that we visited in the days before the internet, where you actually had to go and see a factory to buy the beads. We've also got things from kits, from other designs, bits and pieces and samples that have been left behind from doing books or doing elaborate patterns. There's also little bits from previous videos and things that remind us of places and people that we've met and things we've done. It's a really easy technique and it's a great way of using up all your bits and bobs. I do hope you'll enjoy the videos, and I do hope you will join me and see what an easy and very achievable technique this is. So I've got together a selection of beads around the theme of the colour of ruby to go with our ruby anniversary that we're celebrating this year. Now I've really had a good rummage and I've found some beads that represent different places that we buy beads from and have bought beads and have travelled to buy beads in the past. So we've got Indian glass, we've got Chinese glass, I've got European glass, I've got some more European glass here, we've got some Czech crystal, we've got metal from the States, and I've also got some flower beads that I bought when I was teaching in Japan. I was very honoured to be asked to go and teach in Japan, which I did on 3 or 4 occasions, and those are some of my treasure from then. And as you can see, 10 years on, they're still in the bag, so I really need to use them. I've also got a selection of bits of beadwork from previous projects, so things from through the ages. So we've got some strawberries. I think that was one of the first times I used size 15 seed beads. We've got a little rosette cable edged facet bead which we used for a project in the very first book we did back in about 1997. That's Spellbinding Beading, which we did with David and Charles. We've got a flower that actually came from floral beadwork, which was one we did ourselves, and I've used that flower before in previous videos, so that will be a leftover from that. I've got a little butterfly that we used on a tassel kit. What else have we got here? This is from a kit from many years ago where we beaded around a circle. This is from a simples kit, so a bit of wire, and that might add an interesting texture. I've got some broken bits of jewellery, and these are from France. So we used to go to France quite a lot to buy beads. So we've got some bits from France. I've got some old earrings that I don't know where they came from, but I rather like it. And I've got some seed beads. And the seed beads and the bugles are going to bring together all of these colours, I hope. That's the plan anyway. So the seed beads will run through everything, and that will help to bring together all of these colours. Now, to support our design, I'm going to be using covering buttons. Now these are normal dressmakers covering buttons. I'm using a metal one because on the metal one you can normally remove the hook at the back or the eye at the back. You can use plastic ones as well, but you need to be prepared to perhaps clip off the little loop at the back if necessary. Now to go with the covering buttons, I'm going to need some fabric and the fabric I'm using is a stretch velvet, and I'm going to explain about how to do that in a moment. I'm just going to clear the decks so we can start by covering our buttons and getting on with some stitching. I've cleared a little space so I can have a closer look at the covering buttons. Now these are just standard dressmaking covering buttons, and they always come in two parts. So you have the front piece, this domed bit is what you would normally have at the front of the garment when it's covered in fabric, and then at the back there'll be serrations or something similar that will grip hold of the back plate that you put on to secure the fabric when you've got it over the front of the button. Now I'm going to be using two different sizes. These are 27mm and these are 22mm, but they come in a huge variety of sizes, so that's why this technique's so versatile. You can go up to that size down to really tiny. Now I'm going to cover a large button to show you how to do it, so I'm going to move the small button out of the way for the moment. Now, because it's a button, it's got a shank at the back, and I need to remove that before I start covering the front of the button itself. Now, sometimes the shank will be on this part, sometimes it will be on this part, but this particular design, it's relatively easy to remove the shank just with a pair of pliers. I can just pinch it out like that, and you can see that originally clipped under the edge. Now if you've got a plastic one or a metal one that's attached to the back plate, you might find that you can disconnect it, or it might need to be clipped off. If it needs to be clipped off and it leaves a rough bit, if you can file that down, and then later on we can do a beaded cover for the back of the button so nobody will see where you've had to make your adjustment. Right, here's the fabric we're going to use. Now I've chosen a red velvet because that's going to match in with my beads. Now it's not really seen, but just in case it peeks through on the edge, I think it's a good idea to use a fabric colour that's going to be similar to or tone with the bead you're using. And as I said earlier, I'm going to use a velvet because the pile will help to push the backing fabric away from the surface of the metal, and it makes it much easier to stitch into. So we're going to be applying it back to front. So the pile will go against the metal and you will be working through the back of the velvet with your needle. Right, now in preparation I've done a very rough circle in biro on the back of my velvet, and you can see I've left a margin of about 8mm or so around the edge, and I'm going to gather it up using some Nymo because I'm a beader. I happen to have some Nymo, and this is the thread I'm going to be using for doing the beading as well, but you can use normal stitching thread if you prefer. Now I've started off with a double stitch, and I'm just going to do an ordinary running stitch around the edge, trying to follow the biro line. Now the stitches need to be relatively small, but they don't have to be terribly neat. All we're doing is running a thread around so we can gather up the fabric. I'm going to work all the way around this, and then when I get back to the start, I'll be back to you to show you how to apply the back of the button. So I've done my running stitch all the way around the edge, and I have trimmed off the excess thread. I've left a margin of about 4mm. You don't want to leave much more than that because all this excess fabric around the edge has got to be hidden inside the button itself. Right, now I'm going to start by gathering it up just slightly, because it's quite difficult to get the gathers all the way around in the velvet, especially if you're using Nymo, which isn't really designed for this. So I'm just getting it started. That's it. Now I'm going to pop the button in. Now the button is going shiny side down or front side down on the pile side of the velvet. I'm just going to tighten the thread. As you can see, that bit hasn't gathered, that's the problem with the velvet and the Nymo, so perhaps a sewing thread would have been a better idea, but never mind. Here we go. So you can see it's nice and tight at the front. Now to hold it in place, I'm just going to put a couple of rough stitches right across the middle. Whoops. That will hold it in place while I apply the back. That saves me struggling. Right, now the back plate. There's a right and a wrong way. One way it'll click, the other way it won't. And we apply it to the back. And you can sometimes push it in with your fingers. But I've found with the velvet, I actually need to use my pliers because it's a bit tougher. But don't be too tough with it, because you don't want to dent the front surface. Right, that went with a click. That's now attached. It's nice and neat on the back. Let's trim off the excess threads. And there we have our covered button. Now, that's the large size. I've also done a small size, and I've got another couple here. Now, I'm not sure whether I'm going to use 3 large ones, 2 small, or whether I'll do something asymmetric, or I'm not sure yet. You saw how much of a variety I'd got in all my bits and pieces, so I'm going to have a little play, see what works. I've got another small button available if I need it, and I'm going to start to play at doing some beading. So I'll leave it there for now, and next time I'll be back to show you how to start the beading, how to divide up your space, and how to apply either tassel strands or little loops to bring body to your design. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.